Hello folks, Everchanger here, and welcome back to more Pokemon Blaze Black 2. Last time we made our way through Route 20 and got all the way up to the Flockacy Ranch. But this time, we're not going to be going into the ranch because I actually have something I really want to talk about. So I'm basically going to be running around, catching Pokemon, seeing what I can find, maybe training up a little bit, and we're not going to be making any story progress in this video. But this is something I really wanted to talk about, so we're going to be just sort of jumping right into it, as it were. Just a warning, I'm still recovering from that cold I had at the end of the last episode recording session, so apologies if I get a little short of breath or anything. But anyway, what I want to talk about today is Pokemon Symphonic Evolutions, because I got the opportunity to attend the Symphony in Boston this past Saturday. And I pretty much sort of want to just tell the story of the Symphony, just talk about it, talk about what happened and my experiences with it. Because, oh boy, what an experience it was insane. So, it was in Boston at the, I believe it's the Blue Hills Bank Pavilion. Pretty sure what it was. It was during the Pokemon World Championships, which are also in Boston, which I didn't get the chance to go to. But anyway, we got to the pavilion right around an hour or so before the Symphony started, and there were a lot of Pokemon fans there already. And there were a lot of people cosplaying and stuff like that, and my 3DS, oh my god, that green light just began going off pretty much instantly. Over the course of the night, I completely filled up my queue for Pokemon X and Y, which is 99 in case anyone doesn't know. So I got at least 99 passes with people that played X and Y, which I still haven't registered into my game yet, so that's going to be fun later. And over the course of the whole event, I believe I got 79 street passes for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, which is pretty cool. There was this one guy that had a VIP curse badge, and he was walking around and filming. I didn't realize it at the time, but I'm pretty sure it was Maryland. So yeah, I've been within 2 feet of Maryland, which is quite interesting. I think I might have seen Chugga Conroy, but he wasn't facing me, so I couldn't be sure, and after a while, he walked down to a street corner with a bunch of other guys, so I'm thinking it was probably him, but I didn't get a chance to speak to him. But it was pretty crazy thinking about how I and all of these Pokemon fans were able to share a theater and share an experience. It was really a great experience. So, looking through the gates, I could see that they had a little bit of a merchandise counter, and luckily, my family and I were pretty close to the entrance, so when they finally decided to let us in, we pretty much made a beeline straight there. So I got a Symphonic Evolutions t-shirt, which is pretty awesome. I'm wearing it right now, actually. It's got the conducting Pikachu and the logo on it, and I also got some posters of the Symphony, which I haven't hung up yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be doing it soon, which is pretty awesome. I'm really glad we managed to get there pretty much instantly, because looking behind us, there was a very long line, and over the loudspeakers they were actually playing music from the game. The music that they were playing when we first got there was the trainer battle theme from Black and White, and they decided to sort of cycle through a bunch of different songs over the loudspeaker. They had Route 113 from Hoenn, they had Route 15 from Kalos, they had Castelia City from Black and White, they had a whole ton of things. Now, I'm gonna preface myself talking about the actual music itself by stating that this is not an extensive list, but I might potentially spoil the story for Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, Crystal, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Diamond, Pearl, Black, White, X, and Y. as well as the original Diamond and Pearl, Black and White, and X and Y series of the anime, possibly. Just as a warning, because all of this stuff was shown off in the Symphony. But anyway, we managed to get down to our seats, and we actually got really, really nice seats, pretty close to the front actually, which is nice. While we were sitting there, they had Who's That Pokemon going off on the screen, so they would have silhouettes of Pokemon on screen, and then after about 20 seconds or so, they would reveal who it was. It wasn't a very extensive list of Pokemon that they were cycling through, but they had Blaziken, Combusken, and Torchic, and they had Pikachu, and they had Wartortle and Bulbasaur, and a whole bunch of Pokemon that they would cycle through, which was pretty awesome. It was really fun hearing the crowd. Once the crowd really got seated, when a Pokemon silhouette would show up on screen, you could hear everyone shout out the answer pretty much instantly, which was a really, really impressive and awesome experience to have. But anyway, eventually the musicians took all of their seats and the lights flashed, asking everyone to find their seat, and they started playing like the title screen music. Not any particular title screen music, just the common elements that are in a lot of the title screen musics, and they had all of the title screens for the game slowly panning from left to right. They cycled through pretty much every one of them. And the Pokemon nerd in me noticed that they actually put Emerald before Fire Red and Leaf Green in that little scroll. And Black and White 2 and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were actually completely omitted from this little call of the games here, which I thought was a little bit strange, but okay. And then the lead director came out and thanked us all for being there, and how he had been playing Pokemon for pretty much about 20 years, and that he had always envisioned the games with an orchestrated soundtrack, and that how thankful he was to be able to bring that experience to us. It was really quite an emotional little talk that he gave us there. But he said he was going to be starting out with Red and Blue, and then falling through to Gold and Silver, Ruby, Sapphire, and Diamond and Pearl. And he asked the audience how many people had been playing since 1996, and so many hands went up, and there was a lot of shouting, and it was really exciting, just the energy in the room. But that really wasn't even half of it. I've got the Maryland review of the Symphony from its debut last year in front of me, just to make sure I don't forget any of the songs that they went through, because as far as I can tell, the Symphony is exactly the same as it has been in the past. But anyway, we sat back, and they had this little, I don't know, it was like a metallic vertical sliding door graphic on the screen, and you could see like a blue flash come from the seam, and then it would open up, and the words Pallet Town showed up on the screen, and they started playing the theme from Pallet Town, and it was a really, really nice rendition. It started out a little bit slow, but it started to pick up a little bit. One cool thing was they had, oh wow, a Bagon. Wow. They had graphics of the games on the screen. And one thing that was really cool is they kind of told the story of each game as they sort of cycled through it. So they started out with the character getting their name, greeting Professor Oak, and being welcome to the world of Pokemon. And then they showed the character in their room, and they also showed the little moment talking to the character's mom about how all boys leave home someday. And they showed Red going out into the grass, and Professor Oak calling him back. And then they cut away to the Pokemon lab, and the trainer was able to pick any one of the Pokemon, and the player obviously started with a Charmander. To the great delight of the audience, there was an audible cheer in the crowd when Charmander was selected, and it was pretty awesome. So then they showed the character going back out of the lab, and entering into Route 1, and they got into a wild Pokemon battle, and that was the end of the song. And everyone was super hyped up about it. Huge applause, and that's pretty much the cycle that they went through. They would play a song, and then there would be huge applause, and it would end pretty much just in time for the next song to start. So the next song was Double Trouble, or something like that. And one thing that was really cool is they also had lights that would change color depending on what was going on screen. So they showed the player entering into the game corner, and they were playing the Team Rocket bass theme. And the stage turned very, very deep red, and it was really cool seeing the player walk up to the Rocket Grunt by the poster. And the funny thing is, they actually cut out the fights with the Rocket Grunts. So the player actually would walk up to the guy on the poster, and he'd be like, "I'm guarding this poster, you can't see it." And then since they would cut out the battle, he would immediately say, "Oh no, I have to warn the boss," and run off. So it was kind of an amusing little disconnect that we got to see there. But anyway, the player entered the base, and they showed the characters running through these spinning tiles, and everyone laughed about how they would show the spinning tiles and stuff like that. And this is where they showed some of Pokemon Yellow on the screen, because they showed the player getting to the basement and getting attacked by Jesse and James, which was pretty interesting. And then they showed the player getting into the fight with Giovanni, and they actually showed this fight on the screen. And one thing that was really, really cool is they had a little window with the game footage in it, but there was also like a border / background thing. So the player had a Doug trio, and when it would use Dig on the opponent, you could see like dirt and gravel exploding in the little background thing they were showing, which I thought was really, really neat. So they had this grand epic fight with Giovanni and managed to defeat him, and then he gave his little speech about how it doesn't end here and stuff like that. One thing that was really cool is Giovanni's Persian, since they were playing Yellow, when it would use Payday, you could see coins flying around in the background, which I thought was a really nice touch. But that was the end of that. Oh wow! There's a Meowth! Wow, that's pretty perfect timing. But yeah, it was a very, very exciting moment to see the player defeat Giovanni, and then that concluded that song. And then they moved on to like a little bit of a medley of all the battle themes in Red and Blue. So they had the regular trainer battle theme, and they showed the player battling against their rival in the Pokemon Lab. And then one thing that I thought was really funny is they showed the character walking on Route 3 and getting spotted by the youngster that said that he liked shorts and how they were comfy and easy to wear. That got a pretty roarous laughter out of the audience, which I thought was pretty great. So that was pretty awesome. And then they went into the gym leader battle theme, so they showed the trainer walking up to Brock and challenging Brock. So then Brock would come across the screen and it would say Brock would like to fight, and then it showed Misty, and then Lieutenant Surge, and then Erica, and it cycled through all of the gym leaders in the Kanto region, culminating with Giovanni. And then it sort of transitioned quite powerfully to the Elite Four, and it continued playing the gym leader music for that, so it sort of slideshowed all of the Elite Four. And then it showed Lance's little speech about how we are the new champion, or rather we would be if someone hadn't gotten there before us. And then there was like an ominous pause and all that. And then he said that Blue had beaten the champion before us, so that he was now the strongest trainer in the region. So we went through to Blue, and they played an incredibly powerful rendition of the final boss theme for Red and Blue, and they had graphics of all the battling and stuff going on screen. And one thing that was really cool is about halfway through the song, it transitioned from us doing heavy damage to Blue's Pokemon to Blue KOing some of our Pokemon, so it sort of threw it into question whether or not we would actually win. And I'm saying we because honestly it felt like it was just the whole audience going through this journey together, and it was really, really incredible. So then we finally managed to defeat Blue, and then they transitioned to the Hall of Fame for just a little bit. They didn't do a whole bunch of Hall of Fame stuff. It was probably about 10 to 20 seconds of the Hall of Fame theme. And we were inducted into the Hall of Fame. And that pretty much ended the Generation 1 section, and everyone was super hyped about that. But then we moved into the Generation 2 section, and they played a very slow but very nice rendition of Ecruteak City, which I really, really liked, because honestly Johto is probably one of my favorite regions in the whole game. So they decided to tell a bit of the lore story in Generation 2, so they showed the player talking to people that would talk about the legend of Ecruteak City with the 2 towers and the lightning strike and the 2 Pokemon, and they showed a bunch of stuff with the Kimono Girls, and then they showed the battle with Morty and the aftermath of that, about how he was talking about how Ho-Oh would come down to a truly powerful trainer. So they ended that little section on Ecruteak City, but then they transitioned into a new song called Tales of the Towers. And what this was basically the Bell Tower theme from Gold and Silver. And it was really cool because they showed the Wise Trio from Crystal, and they showed their monologue discussing the entire legend of the region and all that. And then after a little bit of that, they transitioned over to the Burned Tower, which took a very, very ominous turn. It was really, really spooky and terrifying sounding. I really, really liked it. They showed the player meeting Morty and Eugene in the tower, and then they also showed the player falling into the pit after fighting with their rival, and walking up to see Raikou, Entei, and Suicune run away, but not before Suicune would take a bit of an interesting look at the trainer before running off. And then they, in the music somewhere, they played... It's kind of hard to describe. It's that music that plays when the Kimono Girls are doing their dance in Heart Gold and Soul Silver to summon one of the birds. They played that in there, which I thought was really nice that they threw it in. And then they showed the player fighting Suicune, and it was pretty cool because they showed the player, you know, going through the motions of weakening it and paralyzing it and all that cool stuff, and they actually managed to catch it in an Ultra Ball, which is super awesome. There was a lot of hype about that. But then, after the great roarous applause that moment got, we transitioned into a new, much more awesome song. Sorry if I have to mute my mic every now and again, I just have to cough a little bit. I'm doing a lot more talking in this video than usual, and there's just a lot of stuff to get through. But anyway, the next music that showed up on the screen after that was, there were no words on the screen, it was just ... And there was an audible gasp from the audience when that showed up, because anyone who's played Gold and Silver definitely knows the significance of those 3 characters. So they played, they didn't go right into the final battle theme, they actually played the Dragon's Den, which I thought was interesting. They showed the fight with Claire, about how the player wasn't worthy of a badge. And then they made their way into the Dragon's Den, and we were able to pass the Elders Challenge, which was really, really awesome. And then it showed Claire saying that we'd better win at the Pokemon League. So then it transitions to us fighting Champion Lance, and it's still playing the Dragon's Den theme right here. And we do manage to defeat Lance, which is super awesome, but then the screen sort of fades to black and is playing this very, very ominous, like, you know, the beginning of the champion theme in Gold and Silver is just a bunch of beats before it gets into the actual song? Well, it was playing a bunch of those beats, and it showed the player making their way through Mount Silver, and with each beat, the player would get slightly deeper into the mountain, and then it fades to black, and there's this specially made artwork of a cave entrance with the sun shining through it, with a person and a little Pokemon standing next to him. And then it showed the player walking up and meeting Red, and that's when the main part of the song kicked in, and it was absolutely electric. Oh my god. Like, the song was so full of energy, it was absolutely insane, it was super awesome. And it showed the player fighting Red, and we were actually able to defeat Red also. One interesting thing of note is I think we actually started with a Totodile for this match, which is really nice because Totodile's the Pokemon I started with, the very first Pokemon I ever obtained in my career of playing Pokemon, which was super nice to hear. But anyway, that finished up that section, and then they started playing a really, really slow song. It was called The Ancients of Hoenn, and it was actually the Cave of Origin / Meteor Falls music. And this rendition was absolutely beautiful. And on screen they had the player in, I'm pretty sure it was Pokemon Sapphire that they were playing for this. They had the character entering in the sealed ruins, the underwater sealed ruins with the braille in it, and they had the player examining all the braille codes. And then a ominous song started to play. It was actually the Reggie battle theme from Ruby and Sapphire, which was quite impressively done, I must say. It doesn't seem like a song that would really be orchestra material, but I think they actually did really well with it. It sounded very ominous, very powerful, which I thought was super awesome to hear. And they showed the player going to every single one of the ruins around the Hoenn region and successfully solving the Braille puzzle and encountering the 3 legendary golems of Hoenn, which was awesome. And then they showed the player walking into the Cave of Origin and meeting Kyogre at the bottom, which was really neat. But then they actually showed the scene from Emerald where Rayquaza would come down and quell the battle, which was really cool. It was really powerful music during this part, just the whole Reggie's battle theme. It was really, really nice to hear. And when they finished off that, they moved on to probably one of my favorite songs in the whole symphony. It was Falling Ashes, and it was the theme to Route 113 in the Hoenn region. And it was really mellow and quiet, but also powerful at the same time. I don't really know how to explain it, but it was just really, really nice. They showed the player just running through the ash-covered route and leaving their green path behind them. And then they also showed the player going up to Mount Chimney and battling with Team Aqua, and you got to see some of Archie's little monologue right there about how he wants to expand the sea. I'm sure that the person that was cosplaying as Archie really, really liked that, because there was a really well done Archie cosplay walking around the symphony, which I thought was really awesome. So, once they wrapped up that song, which I thought was really, really awesome, they played the Victory Road theme. So they showed the player navigating through Victory Road in the Hoenn region, and it was a very powerful but very, very faithful rendition of the Victory Road theme. They didn't really take too many liberties with it, which is fine because the original song is just so incredible. But they showed the player getting all the way up to the end of Victory Road and battling Steven, and of course entering the Hall of Fame once again. And then they actually started playing the credits song for Ruby and Sapphire, which is probably one of my favorite songs in that whole game. So they showed scenes of the player bicycling back home, and they showed various scenes of the player throughout the game. And it was just a really nice conclusion to the Generation 3 section of the Symphony. But then they moved on to Generation 4, which is Diamond and Pearl, and they played Dreams and Adventures, which is basically the song that plays when you meet Professor Rowan right when you start a new game. It was a very slow, mellow piece, and it was really nice because they also showed the player with their rival walking up to the lake and getting their Pokemon and meeting Professor Rowan. It was really, really cool to see that. And then they moved on to kind of I guess a little out of place piece, which was titled Routes of Sinnoh. And basically what they did here was they did a little medley of routes, I believe 201, 206, and 209 in the Sinnoh region. And it was a really, really nice just medley out of it, and they made it really powerful at the Route 209 part. It was a very upbeat and powerful song, very, very different from the way it is in the game itself, which I thought was really nice. They just showed the player exploring the region and just sort of wandering around, which was really nice. A little bit of a scaling back, a slowing down after some of the very energetic pieces that had been played prior to it. But then we get to probably my favorite song of the entire symphony. This is called The Lake Guardians. And they were playing the lake theme that plays at the Three Lakes of Sinnoh, and they were also showing the player encountering Team Galactic over the course of the game. But, of course, Team Galactic was also after the legendary Pokemon. And then all of a sudden the room got very, very dark. And they started playing the Lake Guardian, like Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf. They started playing the battle theme for them, and it was very, very cool. Probably my favorite rendition in the entire symphony, because they had a lot of very outer spacey sounding instruments, and it was just really, really neat. They had like a deep blue light going on when they were fighting Azelf, and then they changed it to a bright yellow light when they were fighting Uxie, and then a pink one when they decided they were going to fight Mesprit. And this is a light that covered pretty much the entire stage, so the whole symphony was just bathed in this light representing the Lake Guardians. But it was a really, really creative piece, and I think that really it probably is the one song that just had the best arrangement in the entire symphony. Just the obvious care that went into it, but the liberties that were taken with it as well. But then they wrapped that up and they decided to go to intermission, so we had about 20 minutes to wait for that. So I sort of just, went to the bathroom and wandered around like what you're supposed to do during an intermission. It was quite crowded, but honestly, the crowd was very, very well behaved during the entire thing. They cheered at the points where cheering was expected, and they stayed quiet at the points where staying quiet was expected. And everyone was really well behaved and just happy to be there and just having so much fun. It was so great. It really was just so great. But when we came back from the intermission, they started playing the Pokemon Center music, which I thought was a nice touch. Basically, they didn't want to, I guess they just didn't want to play something with heavy story / emotional significance, so even though they had already called people back to their seats, they started playing the Pokemon Center music to sort of guide everyone back into that symphony watching feeling. So they showed a bunch of Pokemon Center stuff on the screen, just players going into the Pokemon Center and talking to the nurse, and I liked how right at the end they showed the nurse saying that she hoped that you felt refreshed, probably as a reference to the fact that intermission had just ended, which I thought was really nice. But no words appeared on screen after that until they showed "The Day I Became King" on the screen. So they didn't like show words for Pokemon Center, they just sort of started playing it, but then the day I became king started showing on the screen, and they were basically playing the opening theme song from Black and White when N is walking down the aisle, so to speak, and getting crowned as king by Getsus, which I thought was really neat. And then they showed the whole Dreams and Adventures thing that they show right after that at the beginning of Black and White, and then they transitioned to the title screen, and the music was pretty much going right along with it. So you had the day I became a king, and then just the little riff that you play right after that, and then they played the actual Black and White title screen theme, complete with Reshiram and Zekrom showing on the screen, which was really, really, really neat. But then it got really, really deep and just crashingly loud, and it was the Pokemon League theme from Black and White, and they showed the character going up to each one of the Elite Four. I believe they went in the order of Chantal, then Marshall, then Grimsley, and then Caitlin, in case anyone's looking for any official order on that. And then they showed Caitlin saying that we should examine the statue in the center to see if we could enter into the Champions Room. But we didn't go straight to that, because they actually started playing the theme for Route 10 right here. And they showed off the scene with Chiren coming up and saying that he wanted to test us before we battled with the champion, and he said that depending on what happens, we'd either be fighting Alder or N. But he really doesn't know which, so he decides that he wants to battle us to test our strength to see if we can do it. So that was really, really cool how they did that. And then after we defeated Chiren, we went up to the badge check gates, and it sort of just faded to black after that. And then a very punny pun showed up on screen. The title was Encounter, so like a pun on encounter, except it was the letter N and then counter, you know? And they showed the player walking up the steps slowly to Alder's chamber at the Pokemon League, and then N was there, and they showed his little monologue about how he is the league champion and he can rule over the Unova region, and he throws his arm up into the air and summons forth Team Plasma's castle, which is the music that was playing at this point. It was a very powerful rendition of it, and it showed the player walking through Team Plasma's castle. They showed the gym leaders of the Unova region confronting the sages and beckoning the holder of the stone to continue forward. They were playing Pokemon Black for this, because the player had the light stone with them. So it also showed them talking to Anthea and Concordia, who explained sort of N's history and all that, which is really cool. And then we actually got up to N himself, and this is where they played N's final battle music, which was a really different take on the song, but I really, really liked it. There was no ominous organ playing like there was in the original, but I think the direction that they took with it was a really cool direction that they went with the song. So they showed the cutscene of N summoning his dragon, and then him confronting us and us beginning the battle, but they didn't actually show the battle, which I thought was a little bit interesting. And then finally they played some words on the screen. They said farewell, and it was basically that entire ending cutscene to Pokemon Black and White. I'm not going to entirely explain what it is, but it's basically the final song that appears before the credits, and it was a very, very emotional song, as you would probably expect, and I thought I was going to just well up during it, because it was just such a beautiful take on the song, with the visuals going along with it, and N telling us to make our dream come true. It was really great. But they obviously weren't very gentle with us in terms of our emotion, because immediately afterwards they played an Eternal Prison from Pokemon X and Y. And anyone who's played Pokemon X and Y knows exactly where this song plays. It basically plays where the character AZ is explaining the history of the king and the lost Pokemon and the ultimate weapon. And the music was played pretty much perfectly with the cutscene, and it was absolutely amazing. I thought I was going to cry during it, to be honest, because the story itself is just so terribly sad. And they played the entire cutscene, just completely uncut. They played the entire cutscene with the music, and it was very powerful when the ultimate weapon was fired and all that. It very loud and very intense, but it just made you feel sad because you know that the cutscene was played in conjunction with so many lives being lost and so many tragic things occurring. Man, it was crazy. But then they played a song called Welcome to Kalos, which is basically the music that plays when Professor Sycamore greets you at the very beginning of the game. It was a very powerful but very upbeat song, sort of to just bring us out of the emotional, I don't want to say rut that we were in, but sort of to just lighten the mood a little bit. And they showed Professor Sycamore on the screen greeting us, and they showed the beginning cutscenes where the player puts on their clothes and they get their first Pokemon and all that, which I thought was really cool. And they also continued into playing the theme for Vanillville Town, which was really, really nice. Just a very slow introduction to the final act of the symphony, which is really, really nice. And then they transitioned into Professor Sycamore's theme, which is, as you would expect, Professor Sycamore's theme. The words were just Professor Sycamore on the screen. But they showed the player in Lumiose City tracking down the lab, and the, I don't want to say live action, but correctly proportioned human beings section of Professor Sycamore going, "It's great to finally meet you," and stuff like that. And they show how he lets you pick one of the Kanto starters and all that. And then they actually showed the player returning with a completed Pokédex, which was really interesting because on screen, Professor Sycamore stated that the player had successfully caught 721 kinds of Pokemon, which is interesting because Pokemon number 721 hasn't been officially revealed yet by the Pokemon Company. And as far as I know, the producers have stated this is actually done on purpose, so I guess you can take that as you will. So, then we moved on to the quote-unquote final song of the concert. It was called Friends, Fights, and Finales. And they started off with playing that theme that plays whenever you're hanging out with your friends in X and Y. And they showed the scene on the bridge on route, I don't remember exactly what route it was like route 20 something in the Kalos region, where you meet up with all your friends, and Trevor is sort of questioning if he'll be able to, I don't know, make it in the world, which I thought was really, really emotional and cool and stuff. And then they showed the player entering into Victory Road with that whole cutscene, and they showed the player fighting their rival, and the rival being disappointed that they were still unable to defeat us. And just that whole emotional scene in Victory Road, which I thought was pretty neat. And then they moved on to the gym leader battle theme, which was really cool, because you know how the gym leader theme in X and Y doesn't really lend itself very well to being orchestrated, you would think, but oh man, were we wrong on that front. So the main beat of the song starts playing, and it was very, very powerful. Like, the whole room was just shaking with every beat. And they had a really cool, like, sort of 3D prism triangle light line thing going on the screen, and it would change color as we cycled through each gym leader, so it showed us fighting every single gym leader, and the thing would actually change its colors with each type that we would defeat. And then it made us go through the Wolfric fight, and it showed us after the fight when the gym would sort of transform and let us pass out of the gym. So after that we ran out of the gym, and then it started playing the first credits theme from X and Y. I believe it's called I Will Go With You. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. And it showed the player at the final parade in X and Y with Professor Sycamore and all the characters slowly walking down the quote-unquote aisle, and Professor Sycamore presenting them all with the honor of Kalos for their services in battling Team Flare. And it was really cool because then they showed the scene of Professor Sycamore saying, "On behalf of all of the Kalos region," and then pausing dramatically and then throwing out his arms and going, "Thank you," as if to thank the entire audience for being such great fans. And then that was it. The logo of the Symphony showed up on the screen, and there was a crazy standing ovation, probably at least a minute, maybe even 2 minutes of just standing ovation. It was absolutely incredible just to see everyone so enthused by the work that had been put into this symphony and how it had all paid off in the end. But then after that had finally been done, the producer came up and said that they had an encore for us, which of course you gotta do at one of these things. And the words "Gotta Catch 'em All" appeared on the screen, and they had a vocalist come up and they said that the song doesn't work without audience participation. And then they played a whole bunch of scenes from the anime while playing the original Pokemon theme, and the whole room was just singing along. It was absolutely insane how loud it was. Everyone was singing the song just completely perfectly, although I thought it was amusing how the audience got slightly quieter once we got past the first verse of the song, because after that they don't actually play it during the TV show, so you have to look up the full-length version. But you could tell that the audience was definitely carrying the performance the entire way, and they showed a whole bunch of scenes from all sorts of series of the anime, although I'm pretty sure Advanced Generation of the anime was completely absent during this part. Probably because it's the only series where none of the scenes had been produced in widescreen high definition. So for the original series, a lot of the original series scenes that they used were from that black and white episode with Charizard's reintroduction with all the flashbacks, which I thought was pretty cool. For some odd reason, the biggest focus during this part was actually the battle of Ash versus Trip in the Unova League. And I really don't understand why that is, because I don't hold that fight in very high regard in the anime, simply because the Ash-Trip rivalry was a very, I don't know, disappointing follow-up to the much better executed Ash versus Paul rivalry, so I kinda wish they had gone with that fight instead. But I mean, that fight took 90 minutes to get through in the anime, so I guess they just wanted to pick a fight that you could get the whole idea for it in the 5 minutes that the song was playing, so I can understand why they decided to go with Ash versus Trip, but I was just a little bit disappointed that we didn't get to see Ash versus Paul or Ash versus Gary or one of the more fleshed out rivalries in the show. But anyway, we got through that, but they still weren't done because, and this is where it was just so exciting, after Gotta Catch 'em All, there was another really big standing ovation, which everyone was obviously very impressed with both the symphony and the audience for performing Gotta Catch 'em All just so well. But then they said that they had a very special guest for us, and man, I still remember this moment so clearly. enter stage left, I mean stage right, enter stage right was the man himself. It was Junichi Masuda, the game director for probably the past 15 years or so, and the lead composer on pretty much every game. And it was really incredible to just see him step out. He had a conductor's baton in his hand, and the Symphony director handed him the mic, and it was pretty funny because it looked like he was about to speak, but then he held up his index finger as if to say, hang on one moment, and he turned around and he lifted up the back of his suit, and a little Pikachu tail fell out, which I thought was really awesome. And so he thanked us for being really, really great fans, and he told us he was about to conduct Kiseki, which is the final credits song in Pokemon X and Y. And he just went through how he was inspired to create the song, about how if he had been born 100 years in the past, he may have never had the opportunity to do any of this, to create Pokemon music and to present it to the fans so enthusiastically. So he expressed thanks for the fact that in all of time and all of space, we were all able to gather there to celebrate what made us all the same, and that is our fandom of Pokemon. So then he asked us to please sing along with Kiseki, because the song does actually have lyrics, and he also expressed the hope that fans would come together and sing the song together and share their experiences via YouTube, and he actually mentioned YouTube by name, which I thought was quite interesting. And then he got up and he conducted the song, and they had the lyrics on the bottom of the screen, and there really wasn't too much singing along to it. I know I was singing along for it, because that song just really, really resonated with me, and it actually served as a huge inspiration for my speech that I gave at the end of my senior year during my high school graduation commencement, because I was actually valedictorian and I had to make a speech for the ceremony. And I was really heavily influenced by that song, and just how it's really just a huge expression of thanks for this world that exists, and how we have all met. Like, I know I've got some great friends, like Rio the Lion, whose birthday is actually the day this is being uploaded, so shoutouts to him. Just the fact that out of all of time and all of space, we have all been born at this time, so we can all meet and celebrate what makes us all the same, and to reconcile our differences, and to share the world. It was just a really, really great moment. They showed the ending scene of X and Y where AZ's Pokemon returned to him after 3,000 years, and how Professor Sycamore was like, this Pokemon was just waiting for him all this time. And then Junichi Masuda, he wrapped up the song, and there was probably the longest standing ovation of the entire night. It was just so powerful. It was a really powerful moment, just a really emotional way to end off the symphony, and the whole thing was just a huge love letter to the franchise, but not just the franchise, but to the whole world that we live in, and how lucky we are that we get to experience it. So they all took a bow. They had all the musicians stand up one by one and take their bows, and then they played the credits, and that was the end of the symphony. And I can't express how incredible of an experience it was. Like, I feel so privileged that I was able to actually attend this thing. I didn't know if I was going to be able to. It was basically just the stars aligning, me being in the right place at the right time, that I was able to go to this. And I suppose that's also what makes Kiseki such a powerful thing for me, because just of all the times and the places that I could have been, it actually aligned that I was able to go to this thing and I was able to share the experience with all these Pokemon fans, and even like one of the main people that were involved in his production, and just being able to see not only Masuda-san but all of these Pokemon fans with my own eyes and not across a computer screen or a forum or a news post or a comment section. It just made the whole fandom so real to me. It was just a truly enlightening experience, and if anyone has the opportunity to ever attend Symphonic Evolutions, you really have to do it. It's an incredible love letter to the franchise and its fans and all of the people that have made it great. And I really don't know what else to say. It was just, I'm so blessed to have been able to have this experience and to share it with everyone that was there. It was so amazing. It was absolutely incredible. So, once the credits were playing, we left the pavilion, and there were so many Pokemon fans just all around us, and it was just... I know I'm rambling at this point, but it was really just probably the most incredible experience of my entire life. Both as a Pokemon fan and just as a human being living on this planet. You guys, you gotta check it out somehow. Look it up on the internet or attend it yourself. It's just a true expression of what Pokemon is and what makes it so great and what brings its fans together. It was an amazing experience. I could say more, but I think I'd be honestly rambling at that point, so I'm just gonna end it with, I'm thankful. I really am, to have been able to fall in love with Pokemon as a franchise and to be able to celebrate it so wholeheartedly with so many other people whom this franchise has touched. And I think it's confirmed that I'm going to be loving this series for as long as I live, and I hope that nothing ever changes that. Next time on Pokemon Blaze Black 2, we are going to be continuing on to the Flockacy Ranch. Thank you all for listening to my ramblings about the Symphony, and for watching in general, and just being Pokemon fans and just really, really great people. I will see you guys next time.